there is something very unique in your life. You have sons. Please tell us about your sons and about Florida and about why I'm asking you to tell me, because it's so significant. It has never happened before. You are the first. So please tell us. Please now tell us.
So in the state of Florida, it was illegal for homosexuals to adopt kids out of foster care or be foster parents. Now, there were some foster parents that were like, maybe they were gay, maybe they weren't, but the application straight up asked if you were a homosexual. And if you checked yes, you were denied. And I do not need to deny who I am for anybody, anything. Like, I don't. Like, I've learned enough that I'm just going to be me for as long as I'm going to be me. So in 2010, there was a gay couple in Miami that were taking on this little child, and it deemed that that was the best possible placement for this child based on what this child experienced and based on what they've done with them. And so it became in the appellate courts to overturn that gays can adopt. So they were the first couple. And then right after them, because that set the precedent, I went to adopt my first son, and I was told, no, you can't. And I was like, nope. Or Miami, the appellate court said you could. And they were like, well, then that was just the city ordinance. And I was like, then transfer this case. Well, and I've always been like combative. So I was like, well, then transfer this case to Miami and I'll drive back and forth for the court hearings. You can transfer jurisdiction. And they're like, no, we can't do that. Oh, then we have something to talk about. At the time, I'm not going to mention names, but at the time, my vice president pulled me into my office and said, I don't support gays adopting. I'm not going to support this. And it wasn't. And then it was a year-long battle of negativity, and I was so taken back because I worked for the department, and I was like, my job is to find permanency, safety for these kids, and I think I found it. And they kept the case in my name, so I could not adopt. I could not work on an adoption while the case was still in my name for myself. And then when they transferred it within the agency. So then it still couldn't happen because of a conflict of interest. So then I kept fighting again, and then they transferred it to another agency. And then I guess a director got involved and was like, stop it. Oh my gosh. So like my attorney who like represents my company as well was like, I'm going to fight for this. The guardian ad litem attorney witnessed our interaction, was like, I'm going to fight for this too. I ended up having to hire a private attorney to finalize it myself. I talk about a lot. UCF invites me to the University of Central Florida to give like speeches about stuff in the social work department and fighting. And it was a year-long battle. And I remember threatening, like, if it hits a year, I'm going to sue. And I have a year's worth of data to back this up. You're purposely keeping this child in foster care, which is a federal violation. But I won. And then in 2011, I was the first single gay man in the state of Florida to adopt a child. And actually, he still lives with me today. So he's playing his video games. Wow. And I also adopted teenagers, which is teenage males, minority males, which are the least to be adopted demographically.
So you went through that for the first son.
Yes.
3 sons.
I have 3. Oh yeah. And so so again, I have like a whole hour-long speech that I give this at UCF like every year, every semester about my process. But yeah, when I remember going for my second and my third, and my third, I was like, this is the timeline. We're not deviating from this. And I remember them saying like, we don't know if I want this done in 90 days, start to finish. And they were like, even if all the stars align, it won't be able to happen. Nope, it happened. It 100% happened. And I also would like to give a shout out to like the judge. The judge was Judge Daniel Dawson of Osceola County. He was the one who witnessed us, and for a year was like, so where's the home study then? Why? And I'm like, no one's done one. And he's like, why not? And I remember him saying, I have talked with this boy privately in the chambers, and the boy has said, yes, he wants to be adopted. He is a teenager. He's old enough to have his opinion. Why isn't this happening? I mean, so it was really cool to just see the judge fight for a minority, a homosexual minority, for the adoption of another minority. He's straight, but like another minority. It was, I don't know. I think sometimes there's a lot of negativity with racism, but it was just really nice to see somebody looking at it from a stance of this is what the law says, and who cares everyone's personal opinion? We're going to rule with what the law says.
Do you know, like, I got emotional as you were talking because you're a hero.
So look, I'm getting good. So this is my son Abdel. I tattooed his name, and then my middle son Felix, and then my youngest. No, wait, that's Abdel. And then my youngest Michael. And I remember Abdel for a while. He's my oldest. When I was his case manager, he used to call me Mr. Joe, and he'd be like, "Hey, Mr. Joe, how's it going?" And when my second son, after I adopted him, he stopped calling me Mr. Joe, but he didn't call me Dad because it wasn't ready. And I'm a firm believer, you cannot claim the identity of a new family until one has already taken its place. Because you're not going to let go of what you have unless something has already taken over. And it wasn't until my second son, when he started like doing weekend visits with us and hanging out, when I think it was a Saturday morning, I woke up and I was going to make breakfast, and he came into the kitchen. He was like, "I want to know how to cook. I don't know how to make eggs. I want to make some pancakes." And so he's there, and I just see like my first son like looking over the couch, looking at us. And then that's the first time he called me Dad. He's like, Dad, can I help? Can we have some eggs? And I like almost cried a little bit because he felt threatened. And that's when it felt appropriate for him to say, "That's my dad." So I've watched that with all three of them go from that transition from like Mr. Joe to nothing to Dad. I was Mr. Joe, then, "Hey, where are we going today?" to then Dad.
I asked you to come on. I asked you to come on and speak because as a child that started in the projects, my mother was on drugs for 25 years of my life.
That's our monster.
25 years. My father, mental illness, collecting a check, living in the basement of his mother's house. So to not know them and to try so hard to free myself and then to get hit with mental illness from both of them because it's hereditary.
Yeah.
When all I wanted to do was just rid myself of my past. And I ended up today using my past. When I give my videos, the experience and all that I'm speaking about and all that I have learned is because someone became a hero to me. And that was my grandmother.
That's awesome.
And even when we went through that, one day I walked downstairs. She looked at me, I looked at her. I said, "We need to talk this out." And we talked it out. And the crazy thing is, she's still to this day. I have friends, I have clients. She's still like, this morning, she woke me up like, "You're getting dressed every day. You can't possibly have enough makeup. Go get makeup. Let's go." And I went, and she's driving me from Walmart because I use like Maybelline and L'Oreal. Shout out to them. It's good products. They actually have something that fits my skin complexion. They have something that fits my skin complexion. So L'Oreal, Maybelline, I'm that girl. But like, just to not have had to worry. I can't even imagine how your three sons feel knowing that every day, whether they come home from school, whether they're in school, whether they're, traveling, they have stability to come to.
Right.
Stability. Right. So many kids, because I have an uncle who lives in California. And this is his story, but I've heard through my grandmother and different things like that. He has sons. Yeah, he has sons. And it's a lot to be able to give a child safety. And that's not a light position. I really commend you and thank you for that, because there was many talks of me and my three siblings going into foster care. I begged my grandmother not to put us into foster care. And she said, "I can't do that because I don't want them to split you up. I want you guys to know."
Yeah, and that's a reality.
And the thing was, she knew I was gay. So she was like, "I am not about to put you in foster care in the city. Are you crazy?" And I remember, and this is the craziest thing, Joe, I remember being sent outside and the windows being open. And I remember the shouting matches she would have with my uncles and aunts, because they would say, it's too much. You're one person. You're a teacher. You're not a doctor. You're not a lawyer. You're not, you're a teacher. And she would say, it's because I am a teacher. It's because I see kids in my classroom. It's because I have to go above and beyond for kids in my classroom, feed them, bring in cots for them to sleep on, because they've been running drugs all night for older people. You see? So she was like, I am not about to do this to my own. We will find a way. And she did. And, so it's sad because my brothers and sisters, they blame her for things, but she was one person. And in all actuality, the damage happened not with her. We were left with my uncles and aunts. That's where the damage happened, because she was the one leaving the house at dark in the morning and then coming home dark in the evening because she was the provider. She had to work. I remember the hardest year of my teenage life was when I was 14, and my aunt caused a car accident with my grandmother. My grandmother asked her to slow down because it started to rain. I took driver's ed. We know that the roads are the most dangerous when it initially starts to rain, because all the oil and everything comes to the surface before the actual real rain starts to come down and cleanse the ground. And she asked my aunt was picking her up from work. She asked my aunt, please slow down. And my aunt gave her this, I know what I'm doing. I know how to drive. Don't tell me how to drive. The car starts spinning. They hit a tree before the tree stopped them from going into the Schuylkill River.
Ooh.
My aunt walked away without a scratch. My grandmother broke her leg in 3 places and had to take 2 years off from teaching. That was the hardest time of my life. She wasn't even in the house with us. Hardest time of my life.
I'm sorry.
But get this, she came through it. I'm sharing this experience because I'm talking to someone that deals with children. This story that I'm telling you, though it's mine, it is not as bad as it could be, and you know that. You know what these children are coming from. And it is not a joke. And I commend you for because you're not only a father now, you're still advocating for all of those children. All of those children. And I know that can't be easy. And I know that's got to be expensive. You are still doing it. There is nobody to do that. And that's the thing. So many kids just wish. I remember even kids, like when you find out that they're in foster care, they're begging for stability. You see it in their entire, like even boys, they're angry, and people are like, oh, and the system goes, oh, well, they're violent. Well, look at what they came from.
Right. Well, and sometimes these kids are treated like criminals because they're going to a foster home and they're like, hey, can I go out and play? And the foster parents are like, no, come home after school. And they're like, okay. And the reality is, and I've said this to a lot of kids, the reality is they probably could, but the foster parents may not know how to properly say, actually, we're learning to trust each other. So how about if you come home on time the next 3 days in a row, then I will let you go out and play. Wow. And the kids, and I swear to you, I feel like that's really what's saying. The kid's like, can I do something normal? And the foster parents, instead of explaining because I 100% believe that's what their mindset is. I don't really know you yet, so we have to learn to trust each other. Right. But it's hard to effectively say that. Mm-hmm. But I do that with some kids. As I told you the other day when we talked on the phone, I had a couple kids here because they can't find pit placement. And I have a rule in my house: if you don't help cook, you don't eat. So we will cook together. Yes. And if that's what it is. Even if it's as simple as chopping up some vegetables. So we made a shrimp Alfredo with Alfredo sauce from scratch with this kid. But the one boy was like, can I ride the bike around the block? And he had been at my house a few times. And I was like, sure. And I remember his nurse came by to give him his medication. And she was like, you trust him? And I'm like, I mean, the most he's going to, if he runs away, he runs away. Like, I can't control everything that he does. But this boy now is feeling normal and riding his bike around the neighborhood and came back. and threw his bike on the front yard. And I was like, okay, calm down. Like, put it away properly.